Welcome to my channel briefing on Bravo. During Season 5, Episode 13 of Below Deck Sailing Yacht, Daisy Kelliher stormed out on Captain Glenn Shepherd after he brought up complaints from a very picky group of guests. After a one-night charter group left the boat saying that they felt some tension with the female staff members, Captain Glenn called Daisy to talk about the situation before the tip meeting with the rest of the crew. So, before we went out to say our goodbyes, I had a chat with them. They just felt, mostly, that the service wasn't up to the level that you would expect on a super yacht, he told his chief stewardess. There was just such a bad vibe, and I will take responsibility for that. I mean, I felt like I always had my manners. I think I tried to start conversations, Daisy responded. But the looks I was getting, the conversation if I tried to start it, it was like stonewalling. And it got to the point where I was like, I don't want to be around them. Still, Glenn reminded her that she sets the tone for her entire department. How can we come up with a way that if we get the exact same mood from the next guests, what can we do differently? He added. With that, Daisy had enough. Oh my God, this fecking day, she said, causing Glenn to remind her to stay calm. It's not just you. I will make sure. She started before saying "F me" and leaving the room to take a breath. Jesus effing Christ, she added as she left. Take a minute and come back. Take a minute, come back. I'm waiting, Glenn responded. As Daisy walked around the boat, and eventually off the boat, to cool off, she continued using her "this fecking day" phrase. Where Daisy Kelliher and Captain Glenn Shepherd stand after Season 5, Episode 13. After Daisy had a couple of minutes to calm down, she and Captain Glenn resumed their conversation. Hi, I'm sorry for walking off, she said. Glenn said it was fine, and reiterated that bringing up the issues wasn't about chewing Daisy out. Instead, he wanted to try and solve the problem. I know you can do it. Take that on board. Realize that, hey, I can do better, he said. In the end, they finished the conversation with a hug. And what's better? The guests left a great tip despite having a less than great experience, $15,000. Why Daisy Kelliher and Danny Warren clashed. Another reason Daisy was so upset. Danny Warren had approached her to tell her she wasn't pleased with her as a boss. I told Daisy that I think she's unmotivated and not passionate and doesn't give a feck, Danny told her coworker Diana Cruz after the fact, as Daisy made her way off the boat. What am I supposed to do, Deanna? I said it's hard to work for somebody who doesn't give a feck. Naturally, Daisy was upset. Stay tuned for more from the entire crew. Below Deck Sailing Yacht, the storm beneath the surface. The warm Mediterranean sun kissed the azure waters as Parsifal IV, the majestic sailing yacht, glided smoothly across the waves. Season 5 had been a roller coaster ride, but Episode 13 was shaping up to be one of the most tumultuous yet. The tension on board was palpable, the crew stretched thin from dealing with challenging guests and frayed nerves. Chief Stewardess Daisy Kelliher paced the interior of the yacht, her mind racing. Her usually confident demeanor had taken a hit after Captain Glenn Shepherd called her in to discuss complaints from the most recent charter group. The guests, a notoriously picky one-night charter party, had departed with comments about tension among the female staff. Daisy sighed as she leaned against the polished countertop in the galley. The conversation with Glenn replayed in her mind. The discussion. So, before we went out to say our goodbyes, I had a chat with them, Glenn had begun, his tone measured but firm. They just felt, mostly, that the service wasn't up to the level you would expect on a super yacht. Daisy's heart sank. She prided herself on her work ethic and professionalism. The idea that guests felt dissatisfied with her team's service stung. There was just such a bad vibe, she had explained, her voice tinged with frustration, and I'll take responsibility for that. But I felt like I was hitting a wall with them. I tried to start conversations, but they were just cold. It got to the point where I didn't even want to be around them. Glenn nodded but didn't let up. I get that, but you set the tone for your department. How can we come up with a way to handle guests like that differently next time? Daisy had felt her composure slipping. The weight of the season, the criticism from the guests, and the recent friction with her second stew, Danny Warren, all came crashing down. Oh my God, this King day, she had muttered under her breath. Hey, stay calm, Glenn had reminded her, his tone softening. But it was too much. It's not just you, Daisy had started before exclaiming, me. She stormed out of the room, muttering under her breath as she made her way to the deck. Cooling off. Daisy paced the teak deck, her frustration boiling over. She could feel the stares of her crewmates as she muttered, Jesus King Christ, to herself. She needed space, air, something to clear her head. Stepping off the boat and onto the dock, she inhaled deeply, trying to let the cool sea breeze calm her. Meanwhile, Glenn waited patiently in his office, understanding the pressures his chief stew faced. He had seen her work tirelessly to maintain the yacht's standards, but he also knew the importance of addressing guest feedback constructively. After a few minutes, Daisy returned, her face composed but her eyes still clouded with emotion. Hi, I'm sorry for walking off, she said, her voice soft. It's fine, Glenn replied, his tone even. This isn't about chewing you out, it's about finding solutions. I know you can do it. Take this on board and realize that you can do better. His words, though firm, carried a sense of encouragement. Daisy nodded, her frustration giving way to determination. The conversation ended with a hug, a small gesture of solidarity amid the storm. The tip meeting. Despite the hiccups, the guests left a generous $15,000 tip, a testament to the team's efforts to salvage the charter. As Glenn handed out the envelopes, the crew breathed a collective sigh of relief. But for Daisy, the sting of criticism lingered. The clash with Danny. The tension between Daisy and Danny had been simmering for weeks. Danny, feeling unsupported, had approached Daisy earlier in the day with harsh words. I told Daisy that I think she's unmotivated and not passionate, Danny had vented to Diana Cruz afterward. It's hard to work for someone who doesn't give a f. The words cut deep, not because Daisy believed them, but because they came from someone she considered part of her team. As Daisy overheard snippets of Danny's conversation with Diana, her frustration mounted. She couldn't shake the feeling of being underappreciated, not just by the guests, but also by her own crew. Reflections. That evening, as the yacht gently rocked in the harbor, Daisy sat alone on the bow, staring out at the horizon. The day's events played over in her mind. She thought about Glenn's words. He wasn't wrong. As chief stewardess, she set the tone for her team. But the pressures of the job, the constant scrutiny, and the challenge of balancing professionalism with personal emotions often felt overwhelming. She thought about Danny's criticism. Was she unmotivated? No, Daisy knew she gave her all to the job. But the endless grind, the difficult guests, and the internal conflicts had taken their toll. A renewed resolve. The next morning, Daisy gathered her team in the crew mess for a meeting. Look, I know yesterday was rough, she began. I want you all to know that I'm here to support you, but I also need your support. We're a team, and we need to work together to make this season a success. Danny looked down at her hands, a flicker of regret crossing her face. I'm sorry, Daisy. I didn't mean to say you don't care. I was just frustrated. I get it, Daisy replied, her tone softening. We're all under a lot of pressure. Let's just try to communicate better moving forward. Moving forward. As Parsifal III set sail for its next charter, the crew worked in harmony, the events of the previous day serving as a lesson in resilience and teamwork. Daisy and Glenn shared a quiet moment on the deck, watching the sun rise over the Mediterranean. Thanks for pushing me, Glenn, Daisy said, breaking the silence. You're welcome, he replied with a small smile. You're good at what you do, Daisy. Don't forget that. The sea sparkled as the yacht sailed into the horizon, a new day bringing fresh challenges and opportunities for growth. Come back to Briefing on Bravo and see more news.